the beginning of 2020 due to COVID. And
All right,
then actually,
everybody.
luckily,
It's
with
almost nine
another
o'clock.
twist,
It's
we
getting
got permit
late.
on our own, which
John
the
and I have
city
been
couldn't have
watching
done.
the Savannah City
So,
Council, and
we
now we've flipped
we have a
over
family that
to the
comes here
Tybee
regularly,
City
spends a lot of
Council where they're
time on Tybee,
debating or listening to the
and
public
you know,
before
as
debating and
TV zone
voting on an
honors it
updated
because when we are
STVR
gone, we have
ordinance.
bills at other
So we're going to
places,
start the show
and we would
listening
like
into
to be
this
able to
live
offset
meeting
those.
at City of Tybee
We've been in the
Island,
process for
and
almost
then we're
three
going to come
years.
back
We've
and start
paid
commentating
all the
over it in just
fees.
a little
We
bit.
had obviously had a lot of interior renovations to do the
Again,
house. The
it's
house was
episode number
outdated. I would say
97.
it was built in
The road show
92 and nothing had
begins.
changed since.
This is Better
Um,
Savannah.
Let me skip. We decided this year that we were actually going to attempt to sell the home. The idea that we needed to sell before the city council attempted to make it impossible to transfer the STVR license with the sale potentially. This moratorium, the seemingly big grab of homeowners' property rights by the council, has greatly affected my ability to sell home. We've had 8 potential buyers walk away due to not knowing what this ordinance was going to be. I think that the council is being deaf to the rule of unintended consequences. The loss in value has been pretty massive for us, considering that we don't know what we're going to be able to sell it for if we now have to wait 3, 6, 12 months to try to sell it, because this is going to greatly impact it. Um, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir, for being succinct with your information and appreciate your comments. And congratulations on your family. Okay.
Hello, my name's Larry Phillips. I live at 1310 Second Avenue. We've been at that location for permanent for a year and a half. We've currently building our forever home at 1308 right next door. And Mayor Shirley, I wanted to say thank you for your comments earlier in which you clarified some things about the umbrella master plan that, and you referred to the zoning and things like that. That was, I appreciate that. And my wife and I do have the utmost respect for you guys for setting aside your time to represent us. You know more information hopefully than we do. So I'm counting on you to make the best decisions for what we need on the island. Um, with regard to those zoning issues, things like that, I know that we can't, that I have to kind of envision, I don't know all the legalities in it, but I have to think that those master plans, when they were designed, they couldn't have known all of the challenges we would be facing as we went forward. So it's my hope that whatever that master plan was or what it is, and the definitions that it has related to the zoning ordinances as they are now, and you mentioned that, I think if I understood it correctly, shame on those that came before for not possibly enforcing them the way they should have been or interpreting them the way they may have been intended. I think that's probably open for interpretation. And so we can't really change, I don't think, we can't change the past, but we can take all of the knowledge that we have now and apply that to what we know and how it's affecting our community and our residents and our island, and hopefully make great decisions going forward as to what those ordinances or if changes need to be made or they don't need to be made. Maybe they need to be amended if that's a possible thing to do. But I think all of this has created a lot of division, and I try to approach it very objectively and set aside what my particular feeling one way or the other is, and look at it from the standpoint of what's best for everybody. I mean, we frequent the restaurants, we walk every day, we run every day, we use the YMCA, we're at the beach, and I see it all. And my wife and I are very proud and excited to be here, be permanent residents on Tybee, because it's exciting watching it grow. In the last 5 years, every corner, new construction, people renovating their homes, re-landscaping, redoing. I mean, it's all been very, very positive things that my observations have all been positive. And we love our neighbors. We love the people we meet, whether they be people riding their bicycles up and down Second Avenue or whatever it is. We don't really meet a stranger, but I think we just need to use what we know to make the best decisions going forward. We're excited about being here. We trust that you're going to, we're not opposed to changes or things that make it better, but I think that we all have concerns one way or the other, no matter which side you're, looking at. But we, we have those concerns. we want to make sure that we make the best decisions. And so we're relying on you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words and your thoughtful comments.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My face lit up like a Christmas tree in the back a little while ago because there's
This
been.
is Cody James.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My name is Cody Jones. I live at 2200 Old Quaco Road, Pooler, Georgia. I'm the perfect outsider. I don't have an STVR. I don't live on the island. I am purely a housing specialist in my role as the CEO of the Realtors Commercial Alliance of Savannah and Hilton Head and the Governmental Affairs Director for the Savannah Area Realtors and the Savannah Multilist Corporation, which I'm here on behalf of today. Anyways, my face lit up like a Christmas tree because there's all this talk about the fiscal note, economic impact, whatever you want to call that. On October 14th, a year ago, I wrote this very council with respect to Brian West. He wasn't elected at the time. I wrote this entire council. It's about 4 paragraphs in here, essentially saying that I had an opportunity to meet with a group at a conference in San Diego that was doing some similar work on an economic impact study in several North Carolina mountain towns that have similar short-term vacation rental issues. I received no reply from the city, save for a 7-word response from Councilman Brown, which was it was dismissive. That's what the gist of the message was, and that's okay. That's fine. But if there is any interest in doing that economic impact study, hey, we're still here and we're willing to put in some resources to do that because we believe that that is important. I speak today in opposition to the myriad of proposals, specifically the ordinance amendment intent on illegally regulating short-term vacation rentals and the city of Tybie's malicious intent to continue regulating STVRs via rental registry that is expressly not permitted in the state of Georgia. This debate, which has occurred on numerous proxy issues, ordinance policies, the moratoria, etc., began with an earnest promise to seek a balance. You've heard that word a lot tonight. It is painfully clear that that was a broken promise from the get-go. One side of this debate has consistently been listened to more than the other by the city. One side of this debate has been consistently brought to every discussion while other stakeholders have been left out. Some would tell you that it is the residents that ought to be the primary and only voice. And I don't disagree with that statement on its face. But most of Tybie's government, and unfortunately some of Tybie's own citizenry, have a warped definition of this word resident. You are only a true resident if you live on Tybee, but you got to live here 24/7, 365. Anything less is not sufficient. If you do that, there is another exception. If you own, manage, or in some way operate an STVR, you are somehow less of a resident and you're some sort of greedy investor or proprietor of a form of commerce that just isn't welcomed by true residents. You are not a true resident if you make the mistake of having an STVR next to someone who does not want to have an STVR next to them because their opinions on what you do with your property are more important than your property rights. These backyard tyrants have a false sense of ownership over things that they don't own, and this city stokes that flame. And 3 members of the council have consistently put those views on a pedestal. Vote after vote, Barry, Nancy, and Monty again and again have been on the wrong side of property rights. This final ordinance will likely be no different. I only ask that those who think this will accomplish something to give pause. Really think about the consequences of choking STVR activity out of existence. It does not end because you pass some long sought ordinance that spells out desires to tell your neighbor what to do. A 3-2 majority is as easily overturnable in the next
Thanks,
election.
Jim. Marika.
Candidates are up for
We
election.
agree.
What is done today may be undone tomorrow. I ask those who feel that their property rights are being stripped from them to contact the Southeastern Legal Foundation and begin to fight for those rights. I ask for the voters to contact their legislators and ask for the Georgia Assembly to pass a statewide STVR bill that preempts entities like Tybee Council and the Backyard Tyrants and other places across
Local
Georgia.
control
This
until
Backyard
9.
Tyrants Brigade from illegally
Can you
taking
post that appellate court
Savannah area realtors
paper?
will now be engaging more with the Tybee voters and property owners than the council going forward. We encourage property owners to contact us on how to maintain and defend your property rights. And
I can do it as a commenter.
Thank you, Cody.
I'll handle it.
Anyone else? If there's no one else who would
We
like to
tired
speak
now?
Anything on the agenda? We're going to go right into the public hearings. Go ahead, Lisa.
My name is Lisa Dean, and we currently reside at 7213 Tropical Way in 7213 Tropical Way in Savannah, Georgia. However, we own property on Tybee. We have never rented property out on Tybee that we've owned. We've been property owners off and on since 1990. And all of that was based on everything all these people have said about the true love for what Tybee is and has always been, going way back. We did sell our house in February. We did not apply for an STVR certificate when we had that opportunity ahead of the moratorium to try to make sure that we made our property more appealing to others. We had no problem selling our house. And both my house has sold
Thank you.
twice here on Tybee since March, two times in a very short period of time. I'm going to attribute that it was a great house, and it was a great house for when we lived in it. But being one of those residents who wants to be here full time as a resident of Tybee, I worry about what Tybee is really going to look like for all of us. Our intent when we sold our house was to build another home that will allow us to stay here indefinitely. To Julia's point about needing people to help you, we would hope that we would be that, but we want to be able to take care of ourselves. So, in doing that, we took the risk, as many of you have done, took a risk to buy property for whatever purpose you bought it for. You bought it because you thought it was what you needed to do at that time. I'm going to say right now that I don't believe in this ordinance, any parts of it. It's not because of property rights, because I'm not an attorney and I'm not up here to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. I'm here to tell you that Tybee is important to all of us. I'm not going to threaten anybody. I don't care about all this. I'm not standing here with some prepared speech. I had no intention of speaking tonight. I wanted to hear what everybody else had to say before I made up my mind. We can't vote on Tybee any longer. But I will guarantee you one thing, with
Good.
ounce of determination I have, we intend to be back here. I'm asking you all to vote with your conscience, to vote on behalf of the people of Tybee, the permanent residents, and those people who want to visit here and be a part of this wonderful community. Once I retired, I met an awful lot of wonderful people during the pandemic that came up and down my street. I had a chance to talk to them. They love our island. We can't be Tybee if we don't have the STRs. How we manage those, how they are managed by the people who own them, and the ordinances that are already in place, I implore you to consider lifting the moratorium. I wrote every one of you back before you ever voted on this moratorium that it was going to divide this community. And it has gone far beyond any division I ever dreamed of. So today I ask that you please consider lifting the moratorium. Don't have the ordinances voted on, put in place, deny those ordinances so that some of these things will cure themselves, I believe. I think that given time, those people who have flocked here, the balance of economics will take care of some of this, not all of it, but we need to use those ordinances, other ordinances and laws and enforcements that we already have in place first. Give it some time. You can always go back and start over again. So thank you very much. Thank you for what you're trying to do. I know how difficult it must be.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And we can't wait for you to get back, get that house built. Um, at this time, we're going to, okay, Jenny.
Hi,
Ah,
I'm Jenny Rutherford. Wanted to say first, man, I love what Gerald
Here we
said
go.
when he started us out earlier. He made such an excellent point about people moving here and wanting to change the island. And we hear this a lot, like on Nextdoor and Facebook and all these online forums of, well, I moved here and I thought it was this cute little neighborhood and nobody ever came to visit. I thought it was this way. No one told me. But the truth is, Tybee's been a vacation destination for over 100 years. You're hearing people come up here time after time saying that over and over. And, you know, if you want to live somewhere that doesn't have guests and visitors coming, then a gated neighborhood's great. But we can't make Tybee a gated neighborhood. We can't keep people from coming to visit here. And that's what a lot of this feels like. Um, and as so many people have said, if you take two homes, apples to apples, side by side, the home with the certificate is going to be more valuable to more people. And there's
Value.
more demand for that home on Tybee when it has its full bundle of rights. When we start taking away parts of the bundle of rights from some people and letting other people have them. We're choosing winners and losers. And it
Classic
is really dividing
arguments.
our community big time. I've said this before as well. There are people that have lost family members and they're sitting on homes right now that they cannot afford to keep without renting.
She's
The
just an
interest rates are
industry
going
hack.
up every day. I think like a day or two, they just went up 0.75% again. Some of our clients that we're seeing here on the island are getting quoted rates 7, 8, and even up to 9%.
What
So
about
as
the
this
people who live there?
moratorium is
Their
dragging
property
on,
rights elected
people
by
that
the
have been
government,
sitting and
democratically
waiting
elected.
to sell their homes to figure out what we're going to do,
They don't.
um,
All pigs aren't
lose
equal, Chuck.
the majority of the buyers
Animal Farm.
because homes are becoming less affordable here as the interest rates are going up. Also, if you lose the ability to be able to rent it, it makes it less affordable. A lot of people have spoke to that as well here.
You
So
can rent it
I say that I
as
totally
a regular rental,
all of
not
it.
short term, but month
Echo
to
the
month.
lady before me. I think it should all be thrown out because if it does go to court, it's not going to stand up. It's all going to be thrown out. And just like Wilmington, North Carolina, they're
It's not
issuing refunds
necessarily
right
true.
now for over $1 million to property owners who were either denied the right to rent and got a citation and fined, or people that paid registration fees and they're having to pay back 6% interest and the credit card processing fees and all that extra stuff too. So I think this is going to cost the city a lot of money if lawsuits start happening and homeowners start suing over it. Like it's going to cost all the taxpayers money. So that's what I have to say. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Sure.
Jenny.
Same homeowners who
We'll have
illegally
one more
registered to
person
vote.
speak, and then we're going to close this
Yeah,
out. We will
right.
continue to talk about the short-term vacation rental subjects when we go to the public hearing. So you'll have an opportunity.
This
But
is
ma'am,
great.
if you'll
This
go
is
ahead and
Hi,
speak.
good evening. I'm Jenny Van Ostrom Willett. I'm at 1807 Butler Avenue. Thanks to the short term rental, I have officially been here over half of the year. So now I'm a resident. I spend a lot of time here, a week and a half a month, and I stay for the extra weekend just to enjoy this fabulous ordinance that you're putting in. I want to start real quickly by asking a question, and no one's really asked this, but in the we bought our first house in 2019. I might say that I am conforming. I pay for my certificate. I keep a clean house. I've never had any problems. I've never had any complaints or citations. But since I've been coming, Jay has recused himself every single meeting. And this is 3 years. Now, this is a very sensitive subject, extremely, I think, for a lot of people. And it is very
call him
divided.
out directly.
It's more divided now than it even was when we came in 2019 and started listening. And as I understand it, and I might be wrong, and I know he's not allowed to talk, but I think he recuses himself, as I understand, because his sister's in short-term rental, the short-term rental business, I think. And I'm trying to figure out how that um, justifies that recusal, but it means that we now have one lost seat that we probably should have replaced 3 years ago. No offense, Jay. I mean, this is very sensitive. Or he should be allowed to speak because, as I understand it, your sister is also in real estate, which
My
would mean
sister does not run for office, and my sister is not a voice up here. So I'd appreciate if you keep it
no,
to
no, I'm
the
just making a statement
and I'm
because
just
Jay's
saying,
sister.
do not bring my family members into your conversation
There
Oh,
you
about
go.
your
I'm
children.
sorry. Well, let's talk about Jay's family
No,
members.
let's not. Let's talk about what we're supposed to talk about, which is on the agenda. You wanted to speak to something on the agenda. Jay is not on the agenda.
No, no, he's
Kenny,
not.
do you want to finish this or not?
I'm so sorry. We won't talk
That
about Jay and we
you're
won't
fine.
talk about you.
Thank you.
We'll just talk about the
Have
fact
2
that
minutes
we
and
have.
48 seconds left.
I really thank you so much.
My
I appreciate you telling me sometime. I appreciate that. So we only have
Good
5
for you,
members
Shirley.
that are going to vote to this because of whatever situation it is. And in the ordinance, in the new ordinance that came out, we have all kind of new things that are in there. But it's my understanding that the amendments to the municipal code and the land development code of Tybee Island that are coming before you have new language about all kind of things, which we'll talk about in the next portion of this meeting. But most importantly, the thing that's very concerning to me is that the recent grandfather clause, and that's not in the agenda for the open part of the next section, it doesn't negate the existing uses and doesn't relieve the city from damages caused from this proposed legislation. I just wanted to mention that because we've talked about these ordinances and grandfathering and what we're going to do, but it doesn't relieve the city of their responsibility or damages that arise out of this legislation. It additionally
More legal
violates Article 1,
threats.
Section 1, Paragraph 1 of the and Section 3 of
Yep.
the Constitution of the State of Georgia and the Due Process Clause, number 14, the Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. We've heard about that tonight over and over, but we've not really talked about it. I think that's important to talk about. And it's also arbitrary and capricious. And it's an action by the mayor and council of Tybee Island, which is the only reason that I brought up why people are voting or not being allowed to vote or what have you. But all these factors clearly weigh in favor of denying the proposal. All of these factors, I think that we should sit back down and talk about what makes sense. And I do believe that there's a happy median.
I'd
But
like to know if she voted in
Full
2019 illegally.
partial voting force. I don't think that people should have to
Sounds
recuse
like she did
voting
and
force.
got
And I think that people that
struck.
are legally
Now she's
conforming
back.
and have been issued certificates and are grandfathered in should be allowed to continue to rent. And I also believe that people that did not get that opportunity should get it. I think that it should be opened up so that everyone has the ability to be treated the same. And I guess I'll be back before you in the open section, and I won't talk about anybody's family members.
Okay, thank
Y'all
you.
have a
so-
nice night.
Thank you. You too.
You talk
Okay,
about
we
me.
are going to we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we will come back and we will start the public hearing. So thank you for your time.
All right, let's
10
start the
minutes,
show,
guys.
John.
Okay.
Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let SCAD start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.
The following show and broadcast is a production of Better Savannah, an independent expenditure committee dedicated to better policy outcomes at the state and local level. The views, opinions, and statements made by the hosts and/or their guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Better Savannah.
John,
Chuck,
what's going on, pal?
wow, a lot of stuff is going on.
That's got to be one of our, longest ever introductions. I'm sorry to everybody, about that. I did try to come in at the beginning to let everybody know. You remember back a while back, we did a show called A Tale of Two Councils. This is almost like a repeat of that.
Yeah.
Because, it's a Thursday night council meeting night, and the city of Tybee is having, as you just saw, a special called meeting to discuss the STVR ordinance. So they just opened the meeting. I guess all meetings in Tybee require a public hearing to start their meeting. So you just saw that, live on our intro. And I just said to you, John, I'm gonna keep an eye on it. you
Okay.
know, but I'm not sure, you know, how long that break is going to last. But there's a hodgepodge of things. You know, I titled this. This is episode number 97. Before we get started, I'll just let everybody know. Make sure to get your tickets to our live show October 10th, Monday. Uh, you know, Front Porch Improv Theater. About a third of them are already taken, so make sure to get them. The tickets link is in the description of the show. But John, I called this episode, you know, the road show begins because, you know, one of my favorite memories is, you know, before we started Better Savannah, you know,
3 years ago.
in the lead up to 2019, you know, we used to see kind of all of these leaders on a big road show. Okay. And, you know, I kind of feel like the beginnings of that is starting back up post COVID. So
Who are you referring
recently,
to, Chuck?
you know, so recently I attended a Massey Heritage Center discussion on
Right.
Patient Zero, which I thought was, as I said last week, 90% fluff.
Dog
You
and pony
know,
show.
yeah, mostly that, right?
Yeah.
And I want to start, you know, this segment of the show here that, you know, you went to the DNA Public Safety Forum the other night.
That's correct.
And I, you know, this had the sheriff, the district attorney, and the interim police chief. Am I correct? Was the three leaders on the panel?
You are correct. And
Give us your thoughts.
well, okay. Huge attendance, probably 90% of all the seats were occupied. And the Coastal Georgia Center is a significant size room for venues. Just, you know, coincidentally, it was warm, and Chief Gunter had to take his tie off. He was so uncomfortable. And that's now a City of Savannah facility, and the AC is not working. I thought that was ironic and
That's funny.
telling. Anyway, the meeting was really bizarre because the level of concern from the 200 downtown residents that were there around homelessness really took me by surprise, Chuck.
Okay.
They essentially don't feel safe. That is, in their view, the volume of panhandling homeless people in many of the squares has gotten so bad they won't take a visiting friend, you know, to Johnson Square because of the embarrassment and the harassment. Um, it was pointed out that locals don't tend to give panhandlers money as frequently as tourists do. Tourists, I guess, because they're on vacation and they're out of their comfort zone and they're happy and they got cash in their pockets, they consistently give money to the homeless. And the downtown neighborhood people were saying, what can be done about this? Well, nobody has a good answer for that. It was interesting that Jim Marikis did a post recently that you know, maybe Visit Savannah should offer driving instructions to visitors, which, you know, is pretty interesting tongue-in-cheek take on that. If we're going to give them driver eds, we might as well give them some protocols for dealing with the homeless. I personally, not to drag this out, but I could not stop thinking, Chuck, that the reason these issues are so profound is because we have oversaturated tourism in the city of Savannah. Okay, we have failed to regulate it, and if you look at what Tybee is doing, an after the fact, horses out of the barn, retrofit ordinance to try to get a handle on short term vacation rentals. Savannah just completely avoided any sort of tourism regulation back in 2015 and 16 when Emergent Savannah and a bunch of other groups were saying, man, you got to do something about it. Well, here we are 7 years later, 6 years later, and we're up to 15 million visitors a year. Yeah, this is a problem of our own making. And just like you heard those
Right.
STVR owners talk about how sacred their property rights are, I guess the downtown residents just have no standing and no rights. That is, the tourism growth and development has all the rights and all the power and just expands and expands. It's like the blob. It just keeps going. So anyway, there's a lot more to talk about in this downtown neighborhood meeting the other night, but I don't want to filibust the show. So if you want more, I got more.
Well, John, for those listening, I'll put in the show description notes, and on the screen is just a little preview of what you were talking about, Jim's article. We obviously, love our friends over at the Savannah, so
We sure do.
definitely get over there and subscribe. This is the heart of the second district. Both of the meetings you and I attended were in the second district. What was the speech or Q&A given by the second district alderman Dietrich Leggett? What was that like?
He didn't speak.
He did not speak. Interesting.
No, he just made an appearance, shook a lot of hands, slapped a lot of backs, and took his seat. And then about halfway through the presentations, he got up and went out into the foyer, the common area of the Coastal Georgia Center, and got on his phone, which I thought was interesting because the most important stuff were the questions and answers from his constituents. The questions from his constituents in the audience, and he didn't get to hear any of those. But he made his appearance. But it's just Dietrich Light, I'm afraid, and pretty consistently Dietrich Light. He did, oddly, Chuck, he got a huge round of applause by the audience. I guess they just have low expectations. I will say too that I think DNA is in the weeds, in the wilderness right now. They're facing a bunch of things like a declining residential population in the Colonial Historic District.
Sure.
And they're an aging group. The new members that are coming in are virtually mostly retirees, in their mid 60s or 70s. So the identity of DNA is shifting to a smaller pool of residents and an older pool of residents, and their problems are exponentially getting larger with the shootings downtown, the Broughton Streetscape, bungled project, the panhandling. So anyway, I just see DNA as kind of aimlessly thrashing around looking for how to fulfill their mission. And their mission's a good mission, to preserve the quality of life downtown and the architectural integrity of the Oglethorpe plan and the city plan, but they haven't figured out how to do it yet.
Well, they've been losing. They're losing when a Scrivener's error gets SCAD, a 17-story building
You're right.
on the edge of the district. They're losing when this 336 Barnard project on a lane lot. I mean, there's a lot to be said about. It's the same way about the Historic Savannah Foundation, other institutions.
They've all abdicated.
How are we supposed to give just go on their word every time they all come up for council or county or whatever when their record is a failure?
Well, their long-term record, and I've been here 30 years. We used to be members of Historic Savannah Foundation. back in the Mark McDonald era, for those people listening to this podcast, uh, HSF was a vibrant, attuned organization, and it has migrated into vanilla pudding. And that came home to me a year ago when I approached them very politically nice and asked them if they would support some sort of preservation position for the weeping time. And most of our viewers know what the weeping time is, but for those who don't, it's the largest sale of African Americans in the history of the United States. Happened right across the viaduct in West Savannah. Anyway, they said no, they'd have to pass on supporting that preservation effort. Where's that coming from?
No equity.
That Mark McDonald never would have said that. So again, just as the whole fucking place is in a state of flux. There are runaway conditions that we it's like a stagecoach, man, and the horses, there's no driver anymore. The horses are just running at breakneck speed, and it's hard to get them corralled, to get the harness in the leash and get back into the seat and whoa the horses and redirect them on the right path. It's tonight's city council meeting. It's a good example. We spend more time doing celebratory congratulations than honest, objective discussion of policy. We get a little bit of that, but for every little bit of that we get a ton of salutations and aren't we great and Savannah strong. I mean, the whole thing is just becoming a mediated reality in the city of Savannah with the horses running away.
Do you wanna before Tybee comes back into session, you wanna watch a little bit of that debate about the real estate, or I got a hodgepodge of stuff to talk about, man. I went on Kesha's show on Monday to talk about loss, John. Right?
Yeah, I watched your comments, Chuck. They were very good. I think I messaged you afterwards and said very professorial, and I meant that
probably too much.
Well, no, I mean people don't. Again, the runaway horse theory. How do you know about all these little zoning nuances? How do you know the importance of lost, which is so big in terms of dollars, and yet nobody wants to talk about it at a surface level.
Sure. All right, let's just play. I just want to play briefly, a clip courtesy of ATR. Okay.
As a result of some of his management, even the Chatham County tax assessors. So, Chuck, I want to fast forward a little bit and we can double back and talk more about loss. But when we see the leaders of the county and the city making these kinds of decisions, can you help our listeners and viewers tonight understand just how much this hurts this community, this county, and this city?
It's a classic failure of leadership locally at both levels of city and county government. These negotiations are being led by Chairman Ellis and Mayor Van Johnson. Okay, so there's really no other place to pass the buck to than those two. And so I want to highlight, some failures of both of these men. Chester Ellis, Chairman Ellis, to fire your county manager in the exact middle of these negotiations, pretty much at the moment where they moved down, is when he was suspended and then subsequently fired. There has been no public admission as to why this county manager was fired. They're apparently going back and forth on negotiations.
It's a good point, Chuck.
Really need explaining. But, Mayor Van Johnson, sorry about that. All right, so, I was just pointing out in appearing on Kesha's show about how, Chester Ellis fired the county manager seemingly unilaterally during the middle of these negotiations. And then simultaneously, Van Johnson decides to use City of Savannah tax dollars to fund a federal line prosecutor to basically put a middle finger, at the county DA, again, in the middle of these negotiations, John, right? So, I'm going to pull up, just, a piece of Van's press conference from yesterday on September the 21st here in a second. And I just want, to see how important this issue of lost is. If you just want to talk a little bit more about how critical this issue is while I pull that up, I appreciate it.
Sure. Lost is, the golden sales tax penny, because all other sales tax pennies, e-splost, splost proper, and possibly even a T-splost if voters approve it, which I doubt they will. Those collections are exclusively and restricted to capital projects.
Exclusively.
You can't pay your electric bills. You can't pay your staff salaries. You can't pay your insurance premiums. You can't pay your water bills. The lost is fungible money that can go to the general fund.
It's the only sales tax collected locally that goes to the general funds of the county
and
the
keep
city.
Property taxes low.
So Van Johnson spent the last part of his presentation portion of his press conference on this, but this is a question and answer towards the end.
All right.
77% for the cities, municipalities, 23% for the county. The last public offer that was made by the county was a 50-50 split.
Okay. As that stands, if that's
Sean
what's
Evans,
determined is going to happen
WTOC,
moving
asking
forward,
questions.
would that mean Savannah has to increase taxes for citizens?
Absolutely. That means everybody has to raise taxes. It means that municipalities that don't have a tax would have to create a tax. Right. The purpose of laws is tax stabilization. And so the city of Savannah has been able to reduce our taxes to the lowest level in 35 years because we had lost to help to offset those things. Again, in a city like Savannah that generates a lot of point of sale taxes, this is a big help for us. It is a big help for our businesses to help keep their bottom lines in check. It's a big boost for folks that come here that take advantage of the variety of amenities that Savannah has to offer. Obviously, if we don't have that, we have to make it up somehow. And so
I think he's wandering around there in the never land of the greatness of Lost, but principally and simply, Lost allows our millage rate, our property taxes, to be kept at a certain level. Without Lost, our property taxes will almost double in the city of Savannah.
That's correct.
This is, I made the post to you. I said, Van is juggling and Chester is juggling with dynamite right now.
Playing with hot fire, man.
Yep.
I just thought it's interesting. I talked to Alderwoman Gibson Carter on Monday evening on her show about this. The mayor clearly knows how important these negotiations are, and they do not seem to be going very well lately. And he's pushing.
I think he's terrified.
I completely agree. Honestly, I never seen the mayor so kind of uneasy because it's not in his control completely. That's why
his countenance is off balance, and so that people can understand, this is the equivalent of Putin saying, we may have to use our nuclear arsenal, and Biden saying, don't you dare, because we've got nukes too. That's this Lost thing is the equivalent of nuclear options between the city and the county government.
let me find this Nancy Guan piece because she had a little thing put together. I think here it is. Let me put this up on the screen and I may screenshot it later.
Good producing there, Chuck.
I appreciate it, man. I saw this the other day. Okay, let me zoom it in. Okay, so this is a table. Let me get it a little bit more. All right. This is the revenues on the current certificate, the difference without lost, and the projected millage rate. So you see Bloomingdale is going to have a new tax. Chatham County would have to raise taxes. Garden City would have to raise taxes by 281% on the millage rate. Pooler 146. Port Wentworth 154. Savannah, it says 78, and that seems misleading. But remember, with the amount of Stevens Day exemptions, this hit from 12 to 21 is very tremendous for the properties that have been recently assessed, right, John?
It's the whole shooting match, Chuck. I mean, this is equivalent of street warfare on every block when property rates go this high. What are we supposed to do? Pass this along in our rent schedules?
Correct. That's exactly what they want you to do.
Up. They're already jacked up. We're maxed out on everything here. But you and I have talked offline a lot about this, and we don't see Chester's logic in this.
No.
It's like the guy is possessed.
It's horrible. I mean, again, this is a nuclear bomb that both Chester and Van have the detonator to, and and they just seem to be threatening each other, dancing around. It's not good.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things nobody understands, Chuck, and yet it's the fountainhead of budget here for general fund purposes.
Yeah. Well, look, John, the city council, debated a land use, a land sale to one of the most famous developers in town.
Explain that to me. That it's all of a sudden a good deal because $400,000.
Well, they're selling a right of way for a luxury apartment development on Victory Drive.
Is this where Johnny Harris was?
Yes, I think around there. I don't know if it's the exact place, but it's in that same vicinity, right? So they're selling a right of way to be able to do the deal, and it's only worth like 200-something thousand, probably. Maybe slightly more. Maybe it's worth $3 million, but it's not worth much more than that. And these people are buying it for 200-something thousand, plus giving 400,000 to the NGO the city established for affordable housing under this mayor. And the comments of the city stream were quite telling.
Yeah, I'm getting the feeling that any sort of progress on creating affordable housing is so far off because we're not dealing with it directly. We're dealing with this indirect credits. I mean, is the city ever going to build affordable housing units, Chuck, to your knowledge? They're just relying on the private sector.
And the housing authority.
Yeah, well, the housing authority is producing them at one at a time. We need thousands of units. So I'm feeling like there's an awful lot of happy talk and a lot of woo-hoo from Linda Wilder Bryan, but there just isn't tangible outcomes. This is, rhetoric that we're saluting and calling successful. we're spiking the ball in the end zone on nothing, or something that's 10 years out. There's no immediacy to any of this, but they all sound good and look good and pat each other on the back. Keisha's the only one up there that's saying, wait a minute, and Alicia to a certain extent, what are we really accomplishing here? So again, I am my head is swimming with targets and problems that exist, and whether it's homeless, affordable housing, police shortages, lost negotiations, Scribner's errors in apartment projects, no pilot fees from SCAD, no support for term limits, even though they all campaigned on it.
Let's
could go
pick
on
up
and on.
the interaction here with Alderwoman Gibson Carter, Jay Melder, and some others. And I hope I've got the right thing. I think I do. But I'm also keeping an eye on the Tybee thing, which is about to open back up here.
Okay.
Will the Munster Street stay open? Will this woman still have access to her property and not just a right-of-way?
Yes, she will, and David can explain further.
Yes, that's correct. So I guess this is the bakery piece, the former bike shop. Yes, we are retaining the entire street from Victory to that property. So that property will continue to have public access. It will not be severed.
Okay, so in 2017, this was about $300,000 valued at $300,000.
A little less than 400.
A little less than 400,000.
I think it was.
Okay, and so in 2022, at the height of the real estate market, we are proposing to sell it to Wardlaw for $210,000.
That's the appraised value.
Thank you, Dave. It's the appraised value, third-party appraiser, $210,000. The reason that the appraisal comes back differently is by far the most valuable portion of the Munster Street right-of-way for real estate value is the section that the city is retaining. It's the half section that services all of the commercially zoned properties and services Victory Drive, which is the major thoroughfare. So that is the difference in the appraisal. The same methodologies used in 2017 were used in 2022. In fact, it was the same third-party appraiser, and we are moving this surplus through per our ordinance, where we get a third-party appraiser. Both the city agrees with the appraised value, the petitioner agrees with the appraised value, and it's on the agenda today for surplus. The entire right-of-way, Munster Street, was approved surplus by a prior council, but the property never closed. And so
Chuck, this sounds like
the city retained it in
New York Attorney General's case against
what?
Well,
almost 3 years have been talking about community benefits.
Here's Linda Wilder Bryan.
So I'd like to just thank Mr. Wardlaw.
Thank you, Mr. Wardlaw.
For the first time ever, from a private developer, we're going to be getting $400,000 to deposit it into Community Housing Service Agency. I don't know why, but he's also... I just don't understand, but I would like for you to know that the community that directly affects it is for it. They've done a remarkable job. The MPC with bartering and negotiating for it. The city manager, shouts out to the assistant city manager. The least expensive property we're
Chuck,
selling.
don't make me suffer through this.
They are giving more than the
So, again, this developer is buying a piece of land.
Like the goddamn Academy Awards.
Probably short of its actual value by like 80 to 100,000. It's probably worth $3. Okay. But, because they're giving 400,000 now, the parent, this is like the same people who did Rockingham Farms, right? So, ultimately, like, Kesha made a comment about how, this name and this company, they come up on our agenda a lot. And she's right, and they give donations. Look, it's going to be a campaign season very, very soon. And,
time to write those checks.
Time to make sure that there's enough policy, to go around, for all the donors, in addition to
there's enough rhetoric for everybody.
Sure.
But where are the missing police officers? How come the Broughton Streetscape plan isn't going past Bowl Street anymore? How come we're getting a Scribner's error and allowing 17? Keep the rhetoric. Show me, 20 more officers hired, 50 more officers hired, 60 more officers hired. That's what matters to me, and I think that's really what matters at the end of the day to our viewers and the community at large. We're riding along on rhetoric for so long, man. We're gonna have to get out and push the fucking car before long.
Well, John, we're 40 days from midterms. Recent polls show, Warnock in a slight lead or a toss-up. Abrams slightly behind, the rest of the ticket behind. We're going to be getting ready to turn sharply towards these local elections.
Yeah, well, I'm not looking forward to it. If you could quantify how much different things are because of the leadership of this new council compared to the one that got routed and disposed, you would have to conclude that it's negligible. But the rhetoric and the Kliegelites and the spin and the city of Savannah videos, it is
well produced, massive PR operation.
It really is, and I think they don't call us bitter Savannah for nothing. I'm bitter because the rhetoric seemingly has fooled a lot of people who become loyalists and all the way out to sycophants.
But this is the same mayor who can't nail down negotiations with the same Chatham County government he worked for 25 years. Explain that to our viewers.
That's not explainable, nor is the fact that Van's professional career has been spent as a human resource director for Chatham County. And that means that you have supernatural skills in terms of interpersonal relationships and truth knowing. And look at the council. He was completely unsuccessful in uniting this council, despite the big table metaphor. He excluded members of this council. He covertly tried and failed, but then overtly got the charter changed so that the rules of council prohibited anybody from bringing anything up that he didn't want to talk about. That's not an impressive. That's a tyrannical, autocratic record. As nice of a guy as he is, and he never misses somebody's birthday that turns 100 years old, and date night is a popular thing. I get it. Again, I can't pay my mortgage on rhetoric. I can't keep my life in order on rhetoric. I need substance. I need results, and that's why I said if you measure this council's actual work product compared to the prior councils, there's no difference.
John, let's end the show. Let's end the show jumping back into this Tybee Island.
All right.
This is Monty speaking live.
Good.
This is back live and on the public hearing and debate and vote.
It's the intent that this
We'll
preserves
jump
the
in and out,
status quo.
but I'll make sure we end the show.
We're
And
not to try and
Right.
you know,
up or down. There's no means to yank away permits. There's no means to do those types. There's no cap with a structure of working its way down by, I thought I heard 4% a year. There's 766 units now. We haven't taken any right away for re-permitting on sale. That's left completely in place. That's business as usual. So an existing rental permit on sale of the house can be re-permitted by the new owner. That's not taken away. There is no cap that we're driving things down to. And I just wanted, before we launch into that, I just wanted to make sure that the intent here is status quo. We have a good, we're getting there. 37% of the rental unit of the housing stock is rental units. That's up from 2 years ago significantly. So I just want to qualify my remarks you might hear as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Monty. Anyone else? Okay, then at this time, I will open the public hearings for anyone who would like to speak to this. Please come up and, Jaya, did you have a sign-up sheet or no? Okay, you know what, then we'll just go ahead and let people come up and kind of take turns and try to work it out.
this could get wild.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Since I think you made it clear that we're trying to address this, but we can also address other.
Libby Bacon.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Libby Bacon. I have been a resident of Tybee since 1998. I'm a realtor, conservationist, preservationist, raised my family out here. This is my home. I also do have a short-term vacation rental. My address is 8 Rosewood, my primary address. So my understanding is I can address the items that we just went through as well as other comments that I have. Okay, thank you. I am here in opposition to the text amendments and the ordinance as written. Tybee is historically a second home community, or has many second homes. And with increased property taxes and expenses, owners have decided to offset their expenses through short-term rentals, sometimes for only a few weeks during the high season, or to the same people year after year with no advertising. So where I'm going with this is the abandonment clause. The whole ordinance is very vague, has no numbers, has draconian, complicated rules. But the abandonment clause that you're looking at this evening, in my opinion, as written, will increase human density by forcing owners to rent minimally, owners who rent minimally to reach the 90-day minimum at full market value. And then there's the question of what is full market value, because in the off season, the website that you're on may have one thing, but then you negotiate for a snowbird to come in for a month. So who determines what full market value is? And then there's the ability for the city to audit the owner's financial records. I mean, it just seems like a lot of things that are wrong with this. And who is the enforcer of the new and many rules? I mean, I don't think Sharon can be handling all this. So who is going to be doing this? The ordinances and text amendments are silent on what happens to properties in R1, R1B, and R2 immediately. Thank you for letting us know what the intent is, Monty, but the way it's written, you can't really tell what the intent is. Um, so, so I'm just gonna, as I wrote my thoughts today, are owners' STR certificates yanked? If they're allowed to continue as non-conforming use, what happens when they sell? Is a new owner allowed to get a certificate? The moratorium language clearly states that a new owner can apply for a license of a property that has been previously permitted, but the new ordinance and text amendments are silent on that. So that's scary. Even though it's the intent, I have talked to a lot of other people and I've read this multiple times. I don't see where it says you can do that. Um, there's vague language about the cap. Because of the vagueness, council could pass a cap of 0 rentals in these zones a week after this is passed. If there's going to be an intention of a cap, I think a number needs to be set forth. In section 34-261, it states that the city must be notified within 7 days when there's a change of ownership, management, agent, or emergency contact, and failure to do so will void any permitted use as an STR. 7 days? I mean, I doubt that you can find any other ordinance that has that kind of time frame. I'm not as familiar with the Savannah rules as I am out here because I live out here and work out here more. But I believe in Savannah, you're looking at 30 days to get stuff like that done. So I think 7 days is unreasonable and unrealistic. So reading through all of this, it just appears that there are multiple attempts to make STRs fail through unrealistic regulation and vagueness that gives the perception of a lack of transparency. Reasonable regulation is good, and the city acknowledges in paragraph 7 of Ordinance 2022-04 that because of good, recently passed regulations and behavior of those staying at STRs, the behavior of those staying at STRs has improved. But draconian rules are not good. They're complicated, they're vague, they're so, and the rules, many of the rules can be interpreted in many ways because of the lack of numbers, and so on. I support the city's current STR regulations and would like to see them improved upon and enforced. But just because the city has decided to regulate STRs does not mean that it's not residential use. I saw a post on Facebook or Nextdoor yesterday by someone that I hold in high regard that was comparing the need for people to get.
No.
Is my time up?
I was just going to say, as far as I'm concerned, in a public hearing, you're fine. I don't have a problem. Bubba had mentioned 10 minutes, and that's why it was up there. I feel for the sake of transparency, I don't want to cut anybody off.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
No, go ahead.
Wow, they may go till 2 in the morning at this rate.
So I saw a post on Facebook or Nextdoor yesterday by someone that I hold in high regard that was comparing the need for people to get behind this ordinance to when people got behind the 35-foot height ordinance. And I disagree. And I think everyone in this room is thankful for the 35-foot ordinance. So it was done prior to the development of monstrous high-rise development. It was a prevention. These text amendments and ordinances are a taking. People have in good faith purchased, and because the city has made it permissible, purchase second homes and investment properties, and they aren't perfect. There's probably still work to be done, but in my opinion, this is just doing it the wrong way. So I hope, and I'm happy to see serious discussion. I hope that there's lots of questions for Bubba and discussion between y'all about the details of this, the city liability, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you,
Of
Libby.
this,
And again, as
city
Bubba,
liability,
if you could keep it
and I thank you
in respect for other people and not repeat, please do so. But I am not going to cut anybody off. If you want to speak, I want to hear you, and I respect your opinion. If you want to speak.
John, do you
My name is
playing in
Gerald
the background
Shanks. I
somewhere?
live at 12.
Yeah, sorry.
Please.
You want to speak?
I was in the restaurant business on Tybee for 15 years. I know a
Gerald.
lot of fine people. You might
Yeah,
find this hard
Gerald.
to believe, but I can hold my own in a conversation. One of the things I like to do is engage people, ask them what brought you to Tybee. A lot of times it was reunions, weddings, family gatherings. And the reason they chose Tybee was because people came from all different parts of the country, north, south, and west, and they converged on Tybee. And they loved to rent vacation rentals. And Monty, I take a little bit of offense at what you said about this is the level. So what I heard was, I got mine, I don't care about the next guy. That's what I heard, which stops people from wanting to come to Tybee and invest. When I left here a little bit ago, I went home and watched this. And I think that y'all, I've had a lot of careers. I'm not a lawyer and I've never played one on TV, but y'all are waiting for a huge lawsuit. And that gentleman, fine gentleman right there, is the only one that's going to profit. And he doesn't want to, but y'all are going to be opening up a can of worms. The genie is out of the bottle and the bottle's broken.
That's the truth.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gerald. Is there someone else who would like to speak to this?
I was just going to mention, so.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. What?
Sorry, Joshua.
I'm sorry, just 1 minute. What?
Request to try to address the ordinance.
Yeah,
But I know that.
Right, and
I can wait.
no, sir, you go ahead. I think he was just asking if, and I think you've done a good job, and most people have, just staying, like, addressing the ordinance and not necessarily trying to get into conversations with council members. So that nothing, you're doing great. Go for it.
Okay. And then I just want to make sure y'all had said at the beginning that you were trying to address everything and then let us do all of it at once as opposed to individually. Y'all have addressed everything and now this is that open forum. Just making sure I was correct. Okay. So you guys had Joshua Morris, 405 Miller Lane, Unit D. So I attended the planning and zoning workshop that you guys put together, and it was August 3rd. And then I heard some good comments coming from several people. Spec pointed out some things that were glaring and that seemed like needed to be addressed. There was definitely vagueness. There was a lot of go back and forth with the gentleman that sat over at this table. I'm forgetting his name right here last second, but it seems to me that was August 3rd. Nothing has changed in the ordinance other than adding things about parking and what have you. But like the actual basis of the STVR absolutely hasn't changed. You guys have done nothing. The planning and zoning seem extremely confused. And as questions were posed to them amongst themselves, they seem like they didn't have a handle on it. And it just seems like this is continuing. And I don't understand why, when y'all have had a 14-month moratorium, why is this not being figured out? I think there should be some liability there just for that purpose. You've had plenty of time to get it together, and it just hasn't done. And they didn't seem, and it doesn't seem like any of their thoughts have come to you guys, and the ordinance hasn't changed or moved along or gotten more compromised or gotten less vague. I wanted to mention that I agreed with her. I thought that most of it is vague, and it seems intentionally vague, and that's what scares a lot of people. It seems intentionally vague. And I just want to say, I really hope you guys can define exactly what it is before you vote on it. I don't think it's fair to vote with the way it sits now. And then at, and that's kind of back to what Monty said of the status quo. Like it really, it's so vague. Like it doesn't seem like y'all want to keep the status quo. It almost left it open to that if someone sells their house, that license they can apply. Well, that doesn't mean they should automatically get it, and no buyer is going to buy, maybe paying a little more, knowing what it took for that license, and go to closing if they don't know that they're going to be guaranteed to get that license going to be transferred. That matters. And then you said that they're up from 2 years ago. I mean, I really think that you're kind of just getting a grasp on the fact that there's probably been a lot of people doing short-term vacation rentals for many years since y'all have even input all these, regulations in place that are just now getting legal. So that's why you're hearing about them. They've been doing them the whole time. They're just now finally getting around to getting a license. And I've heard a lot of stories about people getting a license a long time after operating. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Corey Jones, resident of Chatham County, not Tybee. I failed to mention earlier, I do manage a vacation rental company on Tybee Cottages, and own the Royal Palms Motel as well. So I've got a couple of connections to Tybee in that regard. To be short and succinct, Bubba mentioned a couple of things that had comments or feedback, and I appreciate that. I guess I wanted to at least be expressed from the podium as well, because a couple of them in particular are somewhat representative of this sense that I have, that there are certain elements in this ordinance that it's a bit of, you can't see the forest for the trees. We've got kind of blinders on, and the intent's good, but the execution maybe not so much, specifically abandonment. Abandonment and parking. I can't wrap my head around those as written necessarily. The only thing that seems to be the intent as written is more attrition. Not keeping the level same, but administrative element for attrition, specifically abandonment. There's plenty of use cases. Libby mentioned a couple. This is not going to lead to attrition. It's actually going to lead to higher utilization of currently permitted properties, bar none, no questions, etc. So you're actually implementing a new ordinance in direct conflict of what you're trying to accomplish. You can go ahead and do it, that's fine, but it just seems messy. I would just ask you to maybe flesh that out a little bit more. Parking is similar. It's very unclear how does that, is the parking element of this a non-conforming use? Or are all these permitted homes going to now have to go pave their yards, right? Because they're not just going to not do it and have your permit revoked. So just, those are a couple of elements that seem to be focused in so much that we're missing the broader vision, and you're actually going to get a result that you didn't intend. And then Monty, I appreciate the comment about the intent is to keep it the same. I love that. That's a great starting point. It's a workable starting point. I would ask, similar to my comments at the beginning of the meeting, the intent and communicating that is one thing, but it's not spelled out in the document. And we can't trust that intent, that it's there. It's actually conspicuously absent in terms of the ability, as you referenced, to transfer the use to a new owner upon sale. So if that's your true intent, I would just respectfully ask, let's spend the extra few minutes and actually put it in the document. There are so many other elements that are excruciatingly spelled out in detail, and that one is conspicuously absent, and that's a huge piece of the puzzle. So respectfully, that would be my one request. If that's your true intent, just give a lot of people some comfort and check that one off the list and put some wording to it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cody. Matt?
Friend of the show. Friend of the show.
Who is it?
Trip over the word balance today.
That Mac?
Yep. Address.
It seems Mac Kitchen, 6 Alger Avenue. Seems like everybody wants balance. I kind of want enforcement. I think if we had enforcement from the get-go, maybe our neighbors that move in and out next door would be more hospitable. It's laborious for residents to
accommodate hospitality over and over and over when you don't know them. You try, but it's not always successful. And you know, we've not really had any enforcement. I've seen all kinds of things and called for somebody and nobody come. That's the part that these people don't really understand, is that we as residents, we do welcome people to come and stay, but without enforcement, don't always get the reaction that we would like to have if we're going to have, you know, people, visitors coming to, you know, visit here. We'd like them to be a little bit more hospitable and kind. And it doesn't work out that way all the time. And so over and over and over after years of nobody shows up to the loud parties, nobody shows up to the dog being kicked around, or, you know, I feel like these people would probably feel the same way if they lived full time and those kind of people were disruptive in their life day in and day out and day in and day out. And I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying you have a vast majority of people staying in our neighborhoods, riding through the neighborhoods at 2 o'clock in the morning, blaring loud music like it's their right to just do that. And, you know, we've got to get up in the morning. I've asked for maybe marking neighborhoods or, you know, signs of respect to people living in the neighborhoods. I don't really want to see Tybee shoot holes in the economy per se, but maybe anything that you do is going to require enforcement. And so far, we haven't seen that. And the people on the resident side are kind of like discouraged. And so whatever the council does, whether they dust up the zoning ordinances and use special review again to bring everybody through due process, please set a standard of how people come down here and behave in our neighborhoods and enforce the codes and put the regulations in place, because we don't have anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Is there someone else?
Hi, I'm Tony Plew. I live at 5 Sanctuary Place. I'm a resident there. And I want to thank the mayor and the city council and city employees for all that you do for our island to help improve it and do what you think is best for it.
Thanks, Jim.
I last spoke to city council on October 14th. I've been to every city council meeting since then, but I really don't need to hear from me every time. I speak in favor of short-term rentals. I'm also pro-tourism for Tybee, as it is our primary source of business and income for the island. I lived on Tulahi for 4 years back in the early 2000s, came to Tybee all the time. 2011, I moved to Tybee and have enjoyed this as an island. I call it home. I now have 3 vacation rentals. I'm my own neighbors. They're all adjacent to me that I own and manage. I've managed these rentals for 4 years. Every single group of guests that have come in my homes, either I myself or a guest services agent has met them. No one has stayed in my homes, in these 3 homes, in 4 years that we have not been met. I enjoy meeting these people. I spend time with them in the community. I often interact with them 2 or 3 other times while I'm here. All guests sign contracts that include the good neighbor policy. Highlights are on the kitchen refrigerator just to remind them about noise and other issues there. I believe short-term rentals provide a valuable resource to Tybee Island. I do have some questions and comments on some of these proposals. The first one's section 1 with the purpose and intent. As a resident, I ask that short-term rentals in those residential areas not be reclassified as non-conforming use. Section 3, the notice of abandonment of non-conforming use. I'm curious how the 90-day selection was chosen. One of the rentals I live in, I try and live in it for 9 months out of the year and rent it for the summer for the last couple of years. Trying to get to that retirement point. Can this help me pay for expenses to get there? As you've heard many other people talk. My 3-month rental for those 3 houses over the last 3 years, including the COVID years, which were higher capacity years, averaged 72 days. So now I'm thinking next year, if I want to keep this rental license, I've now got to extend my rental term for that house from 3 months to 6 months to be able to reach that 90 days. So I think that's a little contrary to the effort of me living in it longer, shorter to meet the policy. Proposed section 4 allowances for short-term rentals to be issued permits and not counting the residential areas is what I read to section 4. There's a lot of restrictions and regulations in that, and it kind of makes me comprehend that any violation of any regulation means they're not eligible for renewal. That's the way I interpret that section 4 is those commercial rental locations with any violation whatsoever is subject to not renewal. The disorderly house nuisance ordinance is written mostly generally on 3 offenses. That seems pretty fair to me and is appropriate for a person renting a property, commercial, residence, whatever, that gives them due notice that they're not performing. Section 4 seems a little strict to me. I'm curious if the disorderly house nuisance ordinance that was established in 2019.
Oh, I'm muted. I'm sorry, John. I think you are too. I'm going to post the link for everybody. Like I said, what a beard.
Yeah.
This is the link to the direct stream. You know, we're coming up on 9 minutes, so I don't want to beleaguer everybody's time on this network here. But like I said, I'm gonna put this in the chat just now. You
know the lesson, Chuck, and I hate
what's
to
the
be
lesson?
The historian here, but through mostly the Jason Buelterman years, there was little to no attention given to this growing, and obviously it was growing. Everybody was seeing it, but they kicked the can down the road, to use a trope. And now things have bubbled over. So they're trying to do damage control, and they're trying to do the right things, and they're trying to respect residential quality of life for the full-time residents. But it's hard as hell because you've got a huge crack problem, and now you're going to go cold turkey. To borrow another metaphor.
Sure.
It's a perfect example of a little bit of regulation goes a long way in the future to avoid these sort of cataclysmic confrontations between the people that are making money hand over fist, and God bless them. But with that comes the responsibility to make adjustments when the government makes adjustments. And this property rights issue, an argument, I shared with you the
put that in the comments, Sue, John. That ruling.
Yeah, how do I? Okay, I'll do it on the page. But what'll be there is a PDF of a 2-week-old 5th District Federal Court of Appeals decision against the City of New Orleans STVR owners and the City of New Orleans, and it's very, very clear. By the way, the next stop is the U.S. Supreme Court. But as of right now, we have a federal appellate court that says regulation of STVRs is not a taking. You don't have endless property rights. This is a commercial business. It may be residential in use, but it is a commercial business and subject to regulation. So again, a little bit of regulation and attention to detail now. I don't care what the problem is, affordable housing, weeping time, historic preservation. That's the best course of action, is to stay on top of your problems, adjust accordingly, and you'll probably have a lot better outcome than this shootout at the OK Corral that we're seeing tonight out at Tybee.
Absolutely. Go watch the rest of that debate. Reminder, get your tickets for our live show on October 10th on the link.
Please come join us.
Come join us, and we'll see you for another episode real soon.
Good. Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you guys soon.
I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers.